Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. It's me, Addy, again, and I hope you guys are doing alright. So the other day, I just completed DBZ Kakarot, and I know what you're gonna say. Addy, this game came out 3 years ago now, so why did you play it now? Between there being a lot of big game releases that I wanted to stream through, and just not having as much time as I do now to play video games, DBZ Kakarot was sadly a game that got left behind. Until now, that is. For me personally, between now and March onwards, there aren't a whole lot of riveting games coming out, so I thought I'd spend the beginning of this year working through my backlog of games that I've been meaning to play for a while. And a big one, of course, was DBZ Kakarot, which I'd been itching to try out considering how much of a Dragon Ball fan I am. Dragon Ball Z was my favorite show growing up as a kid, and I've played almost all the games ever since I was a little guy, short of the Xenoverse series, such as the Budokai games, the Game Boy games, and more recently, Dragon Ball FighterZ, which is not only my favorite fighting game of all time, but also my favorite Dragon Ball game of all time as well. And I've actually made some streams and content around that game too, which you can check out if you'd like. So yeah, it should come as no surprise that I owed it to myself to finally play DBZ Kakarot, this ambitious retelling of the original Dragon Ball Z anime within this vast 3D open world. And honestly, I enjoyed this one. I thought it was pretty good. Getting to see all my favorite moments and more from the anime and gorgeous visuals was a treat. And although some of the in-game visuals might have been rough at times, the pre-rendered cinematics were a whole other story, as they beautifully recreated Dragon Ball Z's best moments. I loved seeing them. Hell, some of these were even better than the original anime itself. Damn, these cutscenes go hard. What? Holy shit. God damn. Oh boy. Shit is cooler than the anime.
I'm just getting started.
Dude, get fucked.
Big Bang Attack!
God damn. That was fucking awesome. Dude, we need a movie with the visuals of this game.
Waiting for you to take this seriously.
Straight up. And you know what? I also love being able to explore the wholesome and mystical world of Dragon Ball while flying around as Goku and his friends. Seriously, the open world traversal here was amazing. It felt great to be able to experience the sheer strength and speed of the Z Fighters as I flew around every corner of the world, going to familiar landmarks, meeting familiar characters, both major and minor, and doing a bunch of classic activities like tail fishing, hunting, and Goku's favorite, cooking and eating. It was all very sweet, and if you're a big fan of the Dragon Ball world like I am, you'll love getting to see every nook and cranny of that world being featured here in some capacity. Like, the game goes so far as to feature nods and references not only to characters and events from Dragon Ball Z, but even the original Dragon Ball anime on top of that. So you can tell that the developers crafted this world very lovingly for not only fans of Z, but just fans of the Dragon Ball property in general. Now, of course, contrasting these very pure moments are the intense battles, which are the lifeblood of any Dragon Ball Z game. During your time exploring both the open world and playing through the main story, you'll go toe-to-toe with not only Z's iconic villains, but these brand new random encounters as well, given that this game is an RPG. And the RPG spin on the game was neat to say the least, and let's say it's akin to something like Final Fantasy, where you engage enemies as a party of 3, while being able to level up, buff stats, and unlock new abilities as you play. And this genre meshed surprisingly well with a Dragon Ball game, unleashing flurries of punches and kicks, followed by all the epic transformations and classic special attacks that we all know and love from the anime, was incredibly fun. And paired with being able to upgrade these abilities, change them up, and modify their stats, made this a really fun action RPG that didn't come at the expense of this feeling like a Dragon Ball game. That said, I really appreciated how this game was very in line tonally with the anime. Just like in the show, it has its goofy, silly, and fun moments, complemented by frenetic and emotional scenes. Of course, contributing to this was not only the solid writing, but also that legendary voice acting that Dragon Ball Z is frequently lauded for.
Gohan, take Piccolo with you and head back to Earth now! Hurry, Gohan! before I lose what little sense of reason I have left!
Okay.
I've had enough. Now I'm mad, Frieza! You will know your place, you filthy Saiyan!
Man, you know a scene is good when even like 15 years after you saw it as a child, you still get chills.
This is Super Saiyan 3. Sorry it took me so long. I'm still not used to this form just yet.
And I love Sean Schemmel's voice acting when Goku's Super Saiyan 3, right? He changes his voice to sound more laid back and serious as Goku. He has like a very distinct voice when he's Super Saiyan 3. It's so sick.
Choice. I want to keep him busy a bit longer.
It's like the most serious Goku ever gets. All this to say, the aesthetics in this game are phenomenal. And like I said earlier, if you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z, you're gonna really like what you see here. But having said that, there's something I need to be honest with you guys about. See, there was a point in this game where I had to stop and ask myself a question because of a number of reasons that I'll get to in a moment. And it was this: would I enjoy this game if I wasn't a fan of Dragon Ball Z? Or would I enjoy this game if it didn't have anything to do with Dragon Ball Z? Let's say we kept the same gameplay and genre but stripped this game of the Dragon Ball world and aesthetic. Would I still play it to completion in that case? And the answer, sadly, is no. Really, the only thing this game has going for it at the end of the day is the nostalgia factor. There are plenty of problems with the game that I had to force myself to endure just for the sake of beating this game. And if I weren't a fan of Dragon Ball Z, I probably wouldn't. So I'll touch on some of those things that I didn't like about this game, a majority of which are embedded within the things that I did enjoy. And almost everything that I didn't like stemmed from one thing, which was repetition. Ranging from the enemies to the sound design, a lot of what is presented in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is heavily reused. You'll frequently run into the same enemies over and over again. Your character will sound like a broken record, repeating the same line every 3 seconds while flying through the open world. Like, I swear, every single time Piccolo even got a whiff of an enemy, he would go, "Well, looks like someone needs to die. Looks like someone needs to die. Oh, there's a little rock there. Looks like that rock needs to die. Someone needs to die, damn it."
Looks like someone wants to die. Looks like someone wants to die. Looks like someone wants to die.
Everyone wants to die according to you, man.
Looks like someone wants to die.
Man, the characters are like broken records, I won't lie. That's a little bit annoying. Say the same thing over and over again. Like, Piccolo, shut the fuck up. I know you're an edgelord. I know everyone wants to die according to you, but that didn't make you cool, bro. Dying isn't cool. It's not cool at all. And then the thing that annoyed me the most, you'll hear the same one song in this game play for like 15 cutscenes in a row to the point that you'll get a headache. Now, this issue particularly irked me because of how jarring the situation with this game's sound design was. The soundtrack itself is incredible, and I loved every single theme here. But the implementation of some of these themes was downright awful. Almost every single cutscene featured only one of 2 tracks for the most part, which themselves were not bad, but were so horribly overplayed and became completely unfitting in some instances. It's almost like whenever this game had an even remotely upbeat cutscene, it would play the most overly jovial music, even if the cutscene wasn't really that upbeat to begin with. What the fuck is this music? Again, why is it so uplifting and triumphant? What? This music is so unfitting. Everyone just got eaten. We're the only ones alive alongside Piccolo. This is a battle of desperation to beat him, even though we're Super Saiyan 3. What is going on? The music is so unfitting in this game. And then when it played a cutscene that had even the slightest pinch of sadness to it, it will play the same dour, depressing theme, which drove me insane because of how many times I heard it. God damn, there's this one song, I don't know what it's called. It's good. I just hated how many times I heard it.
That jerk's going down.
No, not this fucking song again.
Easy, Gohan.
Oh, man.
That's enough, Spopovich. You've had your fun.
Heard this so many times from the other sagas in this game.
We came here for something far more important than this.
I'm losing my mind over this music.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, fucking music in this game, yo. Now, another thing in Kakarot that got kind of repetitive fast was the open world activities. Besides having to fish, hunt, and fly through the skies, collecting orbs, there isn't really much to do in this game. The world feels really shallow. Hunting, fishing, and cooking quickly became old and even redundant to me, and it was kind of a bummer that the side quests in this game are fetch questy in nature and have you just flying around and doing more of those very same activities, if not just picking up random objects out in the wild. Everything is just so bland. But thankfully, these quests are incentivizing to do, since you get a currency called D-medals that you can use to participate in these training missions to then unlock new abilities. And you also get something called soul emblems, which is a smaller part of my favorite feature in this game, the community boards. Now, this is a feature where you can place various emblems of the characters you've encountered in the game in certain configurations and synergies to buff specific stats. And this was really fun to do. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Ironically, this is my favorite part of the gameplay, which is hilarious since I essentially enjoyed a menuing feature of all things more than the actual fighting and open world activities that are the main selling points of Kakarot's gameplay. Eventually, you can also collect the Dragon Balls themselves out in the open world, which allow you to wish certain fighters you've defeated back to life. And once you defeat them again, you gain their soul emblem and also a bit of fun dialogue alluding to a what-if kind of scenario if these fighters were wished back to life canonically in the anime. It was entertaining stuff, and I genuinely enjoyed this aspect of the game. So yeah, even though I didn't interface all that much with the majority of this game's activities, there were still some things here and there that I did thoroughly enjoy doing. But again, I need to reiterate this point here. Had I not been a fan of Dragon Ball Z, I don't think I'd have had as much fun doing those activities. I don't think I'd have enjoyed them at all. It was that nostalgia and seeing my favorite characters who I grew up with doing cool things that kept me bound to the gameplay loop at the end of the day. But you know what? Okay, I'll give it this, right? I'll admit. Even though all the open world elements did feel shallow and repetitive, they were still kind of addicting in a way. I mean, there's something so fun about just being able to dash through this open world and speedily accomplish all these small tasks that would otherwise be these laborious undertakings in most other games. And I attribute most of my enjoyment to that, to how satisfying the flying feels in this game. Again, the traversal through the open world is handled very well here. Honestly, for all the issues I had with this game's open world elements, I still think that this facet of the game was far superior to its main story. Yup, I said it. There genuinely were times where I just only wanted to go around side questing and mess around in the open world more than progressing the main story. Even though that's the appeal of this game. The appeal of this game is supposed to be this ambitious retelling of Dragon Ball Z's iconic narrative. And it sucks that I felt that way. I really wish I didn't. And I think the reason I felt that way is because despite the main story itself being presented in a fairly decent way, there were nonetheless huge problems with its pacing. The pacing is just all over the place in this game. It's bad. You'll have the Saiyan and Frieza sagas at the start of this game, which are covered pretty exhaustively and allow you to experience almost every fight that you would want to from the anime. But then you have the Cell and Buu sagas, which are extremely underwhelming and rushed compared to those first two. Personally, I was really disappointed by the semi-perfect Cell portion of the story, where Vegeta and Trunks go up against Cell in his second form, which was one of the highlights of the anime for me. My favorite character in Dragon Ball Z has always been Trunks, and one of his most memorable moments to me is when he becomes this insane hulking tank of a character by going Super Saiyan Rage against Cell. And I was really looking forward to seeing that transformation and being able to experience that fight in this game, especially when you consider just how beautifully the game had visualized the anime up until that point. But I was sorely let down when the game not only didn't let me experience the fight, but it never once even showed Trunks enter that form. That entire segment was just glossed over. It was so disappointing. The Buu saga was an even bigger offender in this department, as it not only skipped iconic moments like these, but entire arcs of the story as well. It's almost as if the developers ran out of budget and/or time after the Frieza saga ended, given the rift in quality between the game's first and second half. And I get that Bandai Namco needed to cut out the boring filler from the anime. That was a must. And they did a great job of doing that here. They did. But come on, man. Like, a lot of the cut content from the anime wasn't even filler to begin with. And in my opinion, filler or not, these scenes that were missing could have enhanced the gameplay experience. Like, imagine some of these scenes being mini-games or side activities where you actually get to participate in the World Tournament event, maybe even run around doing training exercises on King Kai's planet, Or hell, even annihilate a punching machine as Vegeta.
Now stand aside!
Oh, wow.
Dude, the game straight up even alluded to all three of these things and got me excited to actually do them, only to then just cut to a black screen and ignore them completely. That was bullshit. Like, even the Legacy of Goku trilogy on the Game Boy had more fun and varied activities to do than this game. Like, those games are great, man. They were almost ahead of their time. Okay, maybe with the exception of the first game in that trilogy. We don't talk about the OG Legacy of Goku. Now, DBZ Kakarot does make some fun little minigames out of certain segments from the anime here and there. Granted, they're not enough, but they're here. And I just wish that there were more of them, given that what's presented, however limited, is fantastic. A great example is how you get to go around driving cars as Goku and Piccolo. That's right, this game actually kept the filler driving episode where Goku and Piccolo have to take these driving tests, and you actually get to play that whole segment as this cool-ass Mario-esque minigame, which was damn awesome. I loved it. This game's actually keeping the driving episode from the anime. I wasn't sure, but it looks like it is. That's awesome.
Listen up, Goku. Whether it's in battle or on
That's
the
so
road,
cool, man. Another example is Gohan playing baseball in high school. As short as the minigame was, it still allowed for some novelty during a game that was getting very stale. And more importantly, it allowed for some interactivity during these extremely long and unnecessary cutscenes, where absolutely nothing happens gameplay-wise. And this is another point that I need to make here. Regardless of which saga of the game you're playing, the amount of time that passes between a majority of fights during the main story is painfully long, which is perhaps the biggest issue with Kakarot's pacing. And that is mainly due to the dialogue during the cutscenes that happen between these fights. The dialogue in this game, while well written for the most part, is chock full of redundancy. Exchanges between characters will go on for far too long, where just like in the anime, they'll debate each other's power levels, exclaim at every little thing, and comment on the situation at hand for like 5 episodes in a row. And while it's definitely a part of Dragon Ball Z's charm and isn't inherently a bad thing, the issue here is that this is a video game, where there needs to be a fair balance between gameplay and non-playable cutscenes. In my opinion, a good approach to implementing all these cheesy exchanges would have been to make a lot of them happen during the fights and open world exploration segments themselves. Let us hear what the characters have to say while we're fighting ourselves, and let us hear what they have to say about the story while we're flying through the open world ourselves. Why do we have to watch them flying around and talking in this boring, unplayable cutscenes while we could be flying around and hearing what they have to say at the same time? Now, I'm not saying every single little bit of this game's non-gameplay segments should be condensed or shortened, right? That's not what I'm suggesting here. Like, keep the iconic moments, please do. I love seeing the gorgeous cinematics of Goku going Super Saiyan for the first time, or Gohan annihilating Cell with his father-son Kamehameha. But what I don't like seeing and what I don't want to see is 10 minutes of characters flying back and forth, standing there and talking, and just doing nothing to offer any entertainment value to the player. And sadly, that's what this game feels like for the most part during its main story. It's like watching the anime, except this really boring version of it where nothing exciting ever happens, outside of those iconic cinematics, or the moments where you're the one taking control and playing, which just doesn't unfortunately happen too often. There are hints of a much bigger and better game that shine through every now and again while playing through Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. But sadly, due to the glaring pacing issues and cut content, it's a game that we just don't get to experience. It's not one that we get here. And it's not just those two things that contributed to the issue. For the fights themselves had some problems too. For one, the camera during these battles was awful and incredibly clunky. There were times where I just straight up felt like I was getting motion sickness. On top of this, the way that the difficulty changes throughout the experience is really weird. Like, the difficulty scaling is awkward and very, very questionable. The funniest thing about my entire playthrough is that the first and last hardest boss battle was at the very start of this game, and it was against Raditz of all people, which is ironic when you consider just how weak he is.
Raditz. Raditz. Guy who's as strong as a Cyberman says what? That usually gets to him. I think he's dead, Vegeta.
Big shocker, nobody cares.
Man, I love Dragon Ball Z Abridged. But yeah, Raditz wrecked my ass many, 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 many times. And after I beat him, I sailed through this game and it never once got as difficult as that fight ever again. Now, I'm not saying that the game should have become excruciatingly difficult, but that it would have been cool to see some of the more fearsome DBZ villains like Frieza and Cell pose an actual threat, which they didn't at all. Just like any other game, the level of difficulty here should have gradually increased as I played, but instead it just spiked and shot down at the beginning. Very weird. We're nearing the end of everything I want to say about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot today, but there's one last thing I want to talk about here. DBZ Kakarot does have a few DLCs that have been coming out over the past 3 years that cover some of the movies and certain arcs from the other animes, which is great. And I'm mentioning this because it makes me think about a bigger point that not just me, but a lot of people have been making over the past 20 years of Dragon Ball game releases. And it is this. It would be amazing one day to get a Dragon Ball game that gives the same open world RPG treatment that Kakarot does, if not preferably to a much better degree, to one of the other animes in the Dragon Ball property besides Z. Look, I get that out of all the Dragon Ball Z animes, Z is the most profitable one, especially when it comes to video games, and it is the most recognizable and mainstream one out of the bunch. But still, from a player's perspective, I want to see the stories of the original Dragon Ball, Super, or hell, maybe even the non-canon and divisive GT be brought to life for once, with the ambition of all the amazing games that have regurgitated the story of Z over the years. Now look, I'm definitely one of those fans who'll go, shut up and take my money anytime there's yet another retelling of Z's story in the form of a video game. I won't lie about that, and I will proudly admit it. But still, even I think that it's time to put Z's story to rest and shine some light on some of Goku's other wondrous adventures in the other animes. I think that had Dragon Ball Z Kakarot been a game centered around the story of the original Dragon Ball, it would have worked far better as an open world game, since the spirit of the original Dragon Ball is less so about fighting and more so about adventuring, which is exactly what an open world game is all about in my opinion. Heck, the word Kakarot would have even made sense then, since the original Dragon Ball is all about Goku, aka Kakarot, and less so about his son, which is what Z is. Being able to see young Goku's much slower and more meaningful journey through the bright and colorful world of Dragon Ball before the days of him being able to fly from one corner of it to the next in the blink of an eye would make for a rich and masterful open world game in my opinion. And it would be a fantastic way for players who aren't familiar with the story of the original Dragon Ball anime to experience it. And that's a lot of people. Hell, myself included, since I haven't even seen the original Dragon Ball in its entirety from start to finish. Overall, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is a game that I have a lot of respect for despite its many shortcomings. For a first attempt, Bandai Namco did a fine job at attempting to boldly redeliver the story of Dragon Ball Z in this fully realized 3D open world. The game hits all the right aesthetic notes for its fans, and it beautifully visualizes all the indelible moments from the anime that we hold dear. All that needs to be done now is for them to refine their storytelling and take the world they've created and populate it more densely with activities that are fun and meaningful. And that can be achieved, like I said, through focusing more comprehensively on a different era of Dragon Ball's story. One where exploring the amazing world that lies before you is more important than just the fighting, and then we could have a masterpiece. Until that 10 out of 10 game though, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot gets a solid 6 out of 10 for me. It is a good game with a promising foundation, and I can't wait for Bandai Namco to build upon that and refine it to give us all the dream Dragon Ball game that we've all been yearning for someday. And if you're curious about where I would rank DBZ Kakarot amongst my favorite Dragon Ball Z games, it would probably come at the number 4 spot. I don't think that Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is a top 3 for me. Those would be Dragon Ball FighterZ, Tenkaichi 3, and Legacy of Goku 2. The third of which I would say Kakarot most closely resembles in a modern sense, but isn't surpassed by it, at least for me personally. Anyways guys, I really appreciate you watching my review, and I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe, that would make my day. Even more so than gathering all 7 Dragon Balls and summoning the mighty Shenron. As always, the VODs of my full playthrough are up on Twitch and my second YouTube channel. Links to those are posted below, so be sure to follow me and subscribe to me there. I probably won't make a condensed Let's Play series out of this for my main channel here, but you can always check out the full VODs. They'll be up forever. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay positive, and until next time, keep on keeping on.